In today's program of Colors of Asia, we will reintroduce you to big bands of musicians from our region. In today's program, conductor, a lot to be proud of. Where does one of the world's oldest orchestra live? Bishkek Big Band, modern, fashionable, and actual. In spite of the fact that in the age of new technologies, people's tastes and passions are always changing, orchestral music genre remains in trend. Look at this fountain. I dare to compare it with an orchestra. Every single flash here is a separate instrument, which is definitely wonderful. And when they play all together simultaneously, it makes the whole picture even more beautiful and majestic. Speaking about history, originally formation of the orchestra dates back to the times when secular music appeared, in such genres as opera, ballet, and oratorio. That was the exact time when composers started writing music for the public performances. Orchestra is an essential part of world's musical culture. By the way, for those who are not well informed, I want to remind you that orchestras are divided by genres of music, that is symphonic, chamber, pop, wind, military, string, and jazz. And there are folk, and the latter enjoyed dizzying success with the public. Like, for example, this team from Baku, which will soon celebrate its 90th anniversary.
Aydın oldu. Üçe bir hane kalmış. Biraz geniş eyleyin daha, onu geniş eyleyin. Sıkırdı olmasa. Baştan bir de götürün.
The orchestra of folk musical instruments named after Said Rustamov is one of the most important subdivisions of the Azerbaijani state television and radio. During our filming, team leader Faig Sadikhov held a rehearsal for recording the next work. It should be noted that the repertoire of the orchestra is constantly expanding, so the musicians gather several times a week, rehearse, and then record. And so it has been going on for 88 years. Yes, you heard it right. It's this age of the first folk instrument orchestra in the East, which has been playing from the day it was founded on notes. This band has a great history. It was founded on May 1st in 1931, and famous composer Uzir Jibekov was orchestra's first director and founder of Azerbaijani professional music. That time, Said Rustamov was maestro's assistant and concertmaster. In 1935, he was destined to become a director of the orchestra. Its repertoire initially consisted from arranged folk music. Over time, Uzir Hajibeyev, Said Rustamov began to write their own works, especially for the orchestra. Thus, the repertoire was enriched by the famous Radio March, the first and second fantasies of Hajibeyev. After, the orchestra began to perform works of European, Russian, and Soviet composers. Moreover, the greatest Muslim Magamayev didn't ignore the orchestra and gave it some of his works. It's important to remember that at the first All-Union Radio Festival in April 1936, the band became a laureate and won the first prize, and a year later, with overwhelming success, gave concerts in Moscow and Leningrad. And it was not the only success of musicians. Throughout its history, the orchestra has won the hearts of listeners in many countries around the world. When the orchestra was created, only some famous folk instruments were used. At first, the orchestra consisted only of tara, kimachi, balabana, defa, and nagara. But with the expansion of the orchestra, Uzir Hajibeyev added the zurna and piano, and Said Rustamov added the oud, canon, and saz. Later on, artistic director Nayman Azimov added the flute and oboe. Our additions are alt kamancha. Today, musical band, which consists of 60 people, holds a special place in cultural life of Azerbaijan. Each of band's member is a separate note of the whole composition, and together they make a whole symphony.
Kollektivimiz 60 nəfərdən çoxdur.
I've been working in this band for 45 years. Here are musicians with 30-40 years of experience. Working here is a hard work. I would even say that it's more than work. It's a commitment. Working in this orchestra is hard, as well as managing it. Orchestra records several musical compositions for Azerbaijani state television and radio monthly. Folk songs, mogam compositions, works of Azerbaijani and foreign composers are often played on TV and radio. These works are in the country's main portfolio and are carefully kept. There are more than 10,000 of such kind of works. Our main work is to make musical records for the radio. The great Uzeyir was creating the orchestra along with the radio development. Our goal is to distribute Azerbaijani folk songs and mogams all over the world. And today, we keep this tradition. During its entire history, many famous artists had their performances with the orchestra. Some of them were one of the originators of Azerbaijani professional music. And this tradition is kept to these days. Today, this legendary band accompanies young artists as well as famous singers. Musicians have a kind of cliché. If someone performs some certain song for the first time, this person seals its name on the song. Of course, I mean a successful performance. Those singers who perform this song after the first successful performance try to keep this tradition of the song. It's about folk songs and music. Today we're trying to keep traditions of the old professionals, not let them pass into silence. So we're working on ourselves and make up new works for the collection. Orchestral music can be safely called one of the most unusual creations of man. It's amazing how different notes sounding on different musical instruments turn into a single whole symphony. And this is due to the fact that each of the participants invests his soul in his education. The good and great traditions of this team have been living for decades, and thanks to these people, they will live on. And just as many years ago, the orchestra first performed the great operetta Arshin Malalan, and now it reproduces the music of the great Uzeyir, conveying the mood and subtle nuances of this famous work. When we decided to dedicate the next story to the team, which on the contrary is still very young and very much hopes to live to the age of its Azerbaijani colleagues, it's a big band. As far as I know, jazz bands appeared later than any other bands, but in some certain period of time they started having an impact on other musical directions, for example, chamber or symphonic. The identity of jazz bands is the fact that the most important thing is rhythm. Therefore, in this kind of bands there is a special group of instruments, rhythm section. At first, it seemed that jazz orchestras were a purely African-American tradition, but no. This tradition has become famous throughout the world, has become one of the most interesting and unique phenomena of contemporary music and still excites the hearts of millions. And right now, we will go to Bishkek, where the correspondent Ruslan Kharizov is already waiting for us. I am pleased to hand the word over to him. The word orchestra means a large group of musicians, and you have to agree not every city in the world can boast of such groups of musicians. What cannot be said about Bishkek? Orchestral music is developed in the capital of Kyrgyzstan, and many such groups adorn any event with their performances. And right now we will tell you about one of the most creative orchestras, each performance of which fascinates listeners. We will begin our story from the fact that on one of the dates in March of 2015, 20 professional musicians teamed up for the orchestra to create music. The band was founded on the initiative of young enthusiasts, each of whom is truly in love with their profession. Bishkek Big Band, that is the name of this orchestra. And the main goal pursued by its participants is to introduce a completely new direction into Russian musical culture, including jazz arrangements of famous Kyrgyz works, modernization of local musical traditions, enrichment of the cultural life of the country, and of course, access to international stage.
Первоначально основной состав у нас был на базе музыкантов.
Initially, our main composition was formed on the basis of the musicians of the Opera and Ballet Theatre because we work and, in fact, rehearse here. We invited some saxophone players. It should be noted that our musicians who work in the theatre are all-rounded. Bassoon player plays saxophone, and he's a baritone. Some of the cornetists also play saxophone.
Играет на саксофон, баритон. Некоторые кларнетисты, допустим, тоже играют на саксофонах.
For almost 2 years, Bishkek Big Band has been successfully participating in various projects, often on voluntary basis. And it should be noted that due to the unique interpretation, the use of the best jazz traditions, Kyrgyz work sounded completely different. And thanks to this, the orchestra has already managed to win a huge success with the public.
У нас был сольный концерт, там выступали многие звезды с нами, такие как
We had a solo concert with different famous stars, such as jazz singer Nurkut Chelikhova, Kairat Brimberdiev. I think our uniqueness is that we play jazz. In other words, big band means jazz. Of course, there are wind bands, school and military bands. We differ from those bands in the fact that we have fewer members in our band. For instance, wind bands have 40 to 50 musicians. We have only 20.
В духовых оркестрах, например, состава у них чуть больше, где-то человек 40-50, а у нас всего 20.
According to many music critics of Kyrgyzstan, a similar team sooner or later but had to appear in the country. Why? Because a good tradition has appeared for some time now in Bishkek to hold an annual jazz festival, which has rightfully become an integral part of the cultural life of the capital. Therefore, it can be argued that there are listeners who are able to evaluate the overall performance of the orchestra. Fortunately, there is something to see, and what is more important, there is something to listen to. An interesting story associated with the name of the team. As it turned out, it appeared quite by accident. We went to the performance at Studio 247. And just before the performance, when the presenter asked, "What is the name of your band?" we could not answer. And the presenter himself came up with the name Bishkek Big Band. And from that moment on, we are called that. Because we are in Bishkek and we are rehearsing in Bishkek. It should be noted that today the band has a rich repertoire. These are modern jazz music, evergreen standards of the past years. Their own compositions, soundtracks, musicals, dance pieces, popular songs of Soviet composers, retro programs, and of course jazz with elements of ethnic music. The latter is a peculiar trick of the guys who prioritize themselves for putting on their own various works.
Комус был как бы внедрен как национальный инструмент и в то же время.
In our concert, there were works with komus, otobo, and it was the komus that was introduced as a national instrument, and at the same time in jazz arrangement. We have a lot of works, perform pop songs. We even had rap in the concert. Also, classical works were with us. For example, Dance with Sabers by Khachaturian. The violin was played by Alexandra Donis. In different arrangement with big band, it sounds very interesting.
Khachaturian на скрипке нас играла Александра Донис. Тоже в обработке с биг-бендом, это очень интересно все звучит. Ну и, конечно же, классические джазовые и эстрадные тоже есть. Тоже есть у нас в обработке, есть эстрадные тоже композиции.
No one doubts that over time, the listener's musical preferences change. Every year, in this respect, differs from the previous one. A fashion for something fresh appears. Some new direction becomes dominant. Accordingly, if there is a demand, then there is an offer. But one thing is indisputable. Orchestral works have always been out of competition. They will always remain at the so-called top. And they will always compete with popular music, rap, and other fashionable trends of the 21st century. Right now I'm standing on a bi-square in Almaty. Parade of Orchestras is held every September during 3 days, right here near the famous Republic Palace. It gathers a big audience and amazes with its grandness. And I would like to point out that this event is Orchestra's Parade, famous musical festival, and its tribute to favorite musical genre. It's definitely hard to imagine any orchestra without a conductor. However, most of us are wondering if the musicians are not able to play by notes. Do they really need a person who points out who should start playing and when? But there are many cases in history which prove that without a conductor there are arguments and misunderstanding between musicians. So, who is the conductor of the orchestra? What qualities does a conductor should have? The great maestro Fuat Mansurov used to say that conductor must have sharp hearing and keen sight. He must be a psychologist and must be down on the musical composition and all possible varieties of interpretations. He must feel the audience. And the main thing is that conductor must be kind. And I'm glad to introduce you to a real conductor. Please welcome Big Band, directed by Artur Orenbursky. This team is not the first brainchild of the maestro. In his creative biography, they are both the orchestra of the Ministry of Defense of the Republic of Kazakhstan and the Symphonic Orchestra of Almaty Akimat. This big band exists in the framework of the educational process of the Temurbek Jurgenov Kazakh Academy of Arts, and Mr. Orenbursky has headed this orchestra since 2008. According to him, the work here is different from the activities in professional teams and has its own characteristics.
Потому что все же я как руководитель завишу от постоянного новое слово.
I am a director of the band and somehow I depend on new modern word, rotation. In other words, we are bringing up and teaching a student a musician who later leaves us and strikes on its own. Our former students work in professional bands of the country and abroad. These are special features. When you're bringing up a person and invest in him, the professional skills, then you have to say goodbye. Here we have our own difficulties and advantages. It's up to psychological compatibility. The case is that I set high requirements for the students. We have some kind of casting. I choose the best. And I think it's normal. It creates a healthy competition conditions among students. First of all, it's a commitment to professional growth. Accordingly, not every student succeeds in getting into the big band led by Orenbursky. We accept only educated students, and our most important requirement is the possession of jazz harmony and improvisation. Of course, not all students have it, but the preference is still given to those who have it. Vladislav Nartov is a final year student. Soon he will finish his studies at the academy and will have to leave the orchestra. Coming here in the first year, he of course lagged behind in many aspects, and today he already has enough experience and professionalism in order to set sail for free swimming. We asked the musician what qualities students playing in the big band should have, and that's what he said. First thing is the discipline. In other words, we have to come at least 30 minutes in advance to warm up to be in a good shape. If there is a new composition with a solo part, and if it's a new one and hard composition, it's necessary to learn it. Certainly, our conductor pays much attention to it and to the fact how carefully we do our job and how self-rigorous we are to ourselves and to the band. And how do we feel the band? Do we know it as our home or as a place where we're developing? Of course, there are several teachers who play in the band beside their students. Everyone has its part and responsible for its students, but they are all responsible for their words, at the same time honing their own skills.
Мы себя ощущаем все коллегами здесь, независимо от того, педагог, студент. Если студент здесь играет, значит он достоин.
We all feel like colleagues here, and this is regardless of whether you are a teacher or a student. If a student plays here, then he's worthy to play here, to be here. There are no weak students. Everybody catches up on studies. If there is something missing, it is all right, because there are still students. It means more trainings are needed. If something doesn't work out, teachers and conductor will help with it. I worked with many conductors and orchestras. There were classical, pop, and jazz bands. And today I work in a place where I've been striving for all my life. First of all, I am totally satisfied with the repertoire we play. Second is the conductor. He is a professional in all ways. He's always improving himself and makes us to improve ourselves too. I like it.
Естественно, заставляет всех окружающих развиваться вместе с ним. Вот это мне очень импонирует, нравится.
Во-первых, мы играем все в оркестре, я со своими студентами, на равных.
First of all, we all play in the orchestra as equals. For instance, I work with my students. If there is something not working out, we have some extra classes. I do my best to help them. I teach them, prepare them for the band, because it is an exact place where I was growing up for all these years of my work in the band. It's a non-stop personal growth. It's wonderful. Artur always complicates the repertoire, and students slightly side with the process. Everyone has different level, but we try to adapt them for the band.
Именно к оркестру, потому что здесь рост.
The big band led by Artur Orenbursky differs from many other jazz orchestras by its repertoire, and the selection of works of the maestro fits in so that he himself, his musicians, and of course the listeners enjoy them.
У меня довольно гибкая политика. То есть львиную долю оркестровок я делаю сам. У меня есть программа для людей, у меня есть ретро-программа.
In this regard, I have a rather flexible policy. That is the lion's share of the orchestrations I do myself. I have a program for people, I have a retro program. In other words, when I see different aged audience or one homogeneous group of people, I adapt the concert program.
Наигранных в репертуаре, из которых я...
I have about 150 compositions that are already ready to be played. I will never impose complex jazz on people, model, 3 jazz modern. It's much more suitable for the festivals. In other words, it's for the audience which knows what music to expect. If we play at the festival with ordinary people, we choose suitable repertoire. Everything is flexible here, and there shouldn't be any pressure to the audience. I respect any of my audience. We play different things, starting from romances and ending with Kazakh kyu. However, we play modern jazz with an actual repertoire. Everything is flexible.
Казахских кюев, и при этом играем современный джаз, самые современные партитуры. То есть очень все гибко, прежде всего.
Вот, скажем, национальная.
Artur has a special attitude to the Kazakh national music works of modern Kazakhstan composers and the ability to perform them in a jazz manner.
Еще будучи студентом консерватории, я с огромным удовольствием делал переложение, обработки казахских народных песен. Прежде всего, что здесь родни с джазом?
While being a student at the conservatory, I was happy to make musical arrangements for Kazakh folk songs. What is common between Kazakh melodies and jazz? It is monadic and monotonic. In other words, Kazakh songs are monotonic. It gives great opportunity for the adaptation, and it is great help of arrangement. You make the harmony the way you want it to be. It eases the working process, and almost all songs can be adapted to this particular style and repertoire.
Ложатся на подобный репертуар, подобный стиль.
Mr. Orenbursky admits that the work of the conductor is good in its own way, while at the same time this work can hardly be called easy. Especially if in parallel you have to play, write music and make arrangements yourself.
Прежде всего психолог. Я должен найти ключик каждому.
First of all, director should be a psychologist. I have to find a personal approach to everyone. I have to respect everyone's achievements. It's not always easy to do. Nevertheless, it's all up to the results. If I manage to make a good concert, it means that I did my job well, as a psychologist and as a director.
Со своим предназначением, со своей функцией я справляюсь. И, конечно, это великое счастье заниматься своим делом.
Of course, it is a great happiness to go about your business work and find some common things. When colleagues, friends are with you, and they're also happy when we look in one direction, then this, I believe, is the greatest gift.
Величайшая вообще данность.
Ну вот и все на сегодня.
That's all for today. I'm sure that after the stories we showed you, it became clear for you why orchestral music in our area is something sacred. We love, respect, and cherish this music. You have watched Colors of Asia. See you next time.
До следующей встречи в эфире.